Good afternoon and welcome to this special edition of the Federal Executive Forum celebrating 16 years of profiling IT mission programs in the federal government. This is our first annual Profiles in Excellence Chief Technology Officer program, which will be coming to you from the virtual studios of WTOP and the Federal News Network. I'm Luke McCormack, and during today's show, we will discuss emerging technologies and innovation at numerous government agencies and hear from the key leaders making them happen. With me on today's show are Ron Butra, Chief Technology Officer, Department of Justice, Brian Campo, Acting Chief Technology Officer, Department of Homeland Security, Sanjay Gupta, Chief Technology Officer, Small Business Administration, Rob Brown, Chief Technology Officer, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, Jonathan Album, Federal Chief Technology Officer at ServiceNow, Gary Hicks, Chief Technology Officer, Hitachi, Vantara, Federal, and Cal Varangante, Chief Fellow and Vice President at Equinix. Well, I would have to say back in the day as the CIO, while the CIO's organization is out there blocking and tackling and trying to deal with all the pliers and wires, the CTO group was over there doing some interesting stuff. A lot of times people didn't know what they were doing. And all of a sudden some cool stuff would pop out. And, the reality is that has changed over time, hasn't it? The CTO organization has tied themselves much closer to the strategic outcomes and initiatives going on in the agency on a more sort of real-time basis, if you will. Ron, let me start with you and talk about what is going on over at the Department of Justice in regards to some strategic initiatives where you're taking some of this emerging technology and looking at examining that and making sure it's going to align to meet those objectives.
So first off, good afternoon, Luke, and honestly, it's great to see you here. There's been a lot that we've been doing over the past year in everything from looking at max telework to looking at cybersecurity. But let me answer that question from a bit of a forward-looking point of view. Data remains critical, and I continue to advance our data strategy. We've matured our processes and also advanced our geospatial efforts by building on our geospatial data strategy. The department's released its AI strategy, and I stood up its community of interest, and also data center optimization, IT modernization. It all continues to fuel our transition to the cloud. There's obviously an additional push through the recent Cyber EO. It pushes us to the cloud, has us sharing threat intelligence, looking at zero trust architectures. We've been pursuing zero trust for over a year, so there's a lot of technologies that you have to look at to get there, from EDRs, IDPs, alternative methods for identity management, and zero trust brokers, of course. One thing I'm going to note is obviously we've increased our IPv6 initiatives in response to the recent OMB memo. Just this past week, we've had this great summit with over 1,000 attendees. Clearly, industry and the federal workforce remain engaged. And from an application perspective, I continue to be engaged in low code, no code, and database technologies. Thank you, Luke.
Ron, I appreciate that. And by the way, nice work on that takedown that you all did just recently. That was in the news. That was pretty crafty craftsmanship there. Brian Campo over at Department of Homeland Security. And I just want to recognize the, Ron, if you will, the zero trust play. A lot of people talk about that and they kind of get fixated on zero trust and they kind of forget about architecture. So good catch there. Brian, how about at Department of Homeland Security? You guys are cooking up a lot of stuff over there. I know you're trying to make sure that stuff stitches to strategically where you're going, new administration in, new direction. What's cooking?
Hey, Luke, good afternoon, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. So I think at DHS, we're doing a lot of the same things, right? So as Ron mentioned, Zero Trust is certainly a prime candidate for, all of our new technology work. We're also focused on things like SecDevOps, looking at AI and ML. That's a huge aspect of what we're looking at now. But I think one of the things I want to talk about is going back to your original point, like how are we getting that out to the mission? How are we using technology to really impact businesses and missions? One of the things I'm really proud of that we're doing this year, we started late in FY20, is our target architecture work and some of the way we're doing program governance. What we're trying to do there is we're trying to get out ahead of technologies, starting to look at technologies, understanding how technologies can impact our business and mission, and really trying to do a lot of the hard legwork, going out and looking at those technologies, evaluating them, looking at proofs of concept, and then really doing segment architectures to go and figure out where these can fit into the different missions that we've got. The end result being that we're trying to figure out where we can get technology out to the mission faster, make it easier for programs to integrate the technology, and really looking at technology as core building blocks that programs can stitch together based off of their specific needs. And then the other idea is really getting into supporting the programs as they're doing this. So, again, doing the hard work, understanding the technologies and making them easier. The perfect examples of that are really Zero Trust and SecDevOps. We've built out reference architectures. We've built out, some reference implementations, giving our component partners a chance to kind of just plug them in where they fit. And then SecDevOps, building out monitoring and metrics, building out pipelines. Again, giving our programs a chance to integrate these technologies as quickly and easily as possible.
Fantastic, right? Really laying the tracks down so those operating components can come and go, if you will, and we'll hear from one of them in just a minute. Sanjay, how about over at SBA? You all sort of had a double whammy over the last 18 months. Not only did you have to sort of roll over into a remote response, obviously SBA had to right in the middle of enabling the economy of this great country. So tell us about what you're doing over there, what you had been doing, and how that aligns to strategically where SBA is going.
Good afternoon, Luke, and thank you for having me here. And yes, definitely, as most all of you in the audience probably know, SBA has been one of the core agencies leading the response for the nation's largest ever economic recovery initiative. And it's just been an incredible last 15 months, and it continues, by the way. But let me kind of give some couple of specific examples of how some of the innovations that we had put in place came to use to our mission, and some of those are still continuing to be developed further. So as you may remember, Luke, back in 2017, I led the cloud initiative for the SBA, led the solid foundation. And quite frankly, that has been immensely useful and beneficial for SBA to scale up almost overnight in an exponential fashion. And just to sort of give a compare contrast, typical year, SBA does $25 to $30 billion of loan and capital processing. In the last year plus now, we have processed nearly $1 trillion in capital, and that continues on. So you can sort of do the math and figure out what the exponential scaling we needed to do overnight. And cloud, quite frankly, had we not had established that cloud foundation back in 2017 and the cybersecurity as well, I just shudder to think what the outcomes might have been. Secondly, we're also leveraging new capabilities that are enabled by that cloud foundation. So specifically, 2 or 3 areas. Obviously, cybersecurity, and we've talked about that in the past, how we've enabled cloud-based cybersecurity. But I'll talk about AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities. We have increasingly utilized artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities, specifically things like anomaly detection, things like natural language processing, things like using algorithm-based decision support systems. And those have been all very beneficial for us in the critical time that we've had to scale up in unimaginable ways over the last year and a half plus. Further, we've also continued to build on a zero trust architecture foundation. Again, as we've talked in the past, back in 2019, I led the CDM, or the Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation 90-day modernization effort with the DHS CDM program. And that's when we had uncovered some of the issues around the core for zero trust, which is identity. And so let me just give a very quick example around what the issues we were grappling with together back in 2019 is identity around individuals. Obviously, that's a kind of a clear element, but there's also identity around the IT assets. And specifically in the cloud world, you have your IT assets or virtual machines that are probably ephemeral. And so there was not really a cloud model for identifying uniquely those virtual assets. So back then, when I led this initiative, working with the CDM program team, we defined the model for uniquely identifying all cloud-based virtual machine identifications. And so that foundation we've continued to build on, and we hope to continue to, accelerate some of the implementation of those solutions as we go forward. So
No
back to you,
doubt
Luke.
that preemptive work has really paid off as you start to stack some weight on that type of capability. And
Absolutely.
I'm sure you're happy, and I'm sure, well, we're all happy that you were able to do that. Rob Brown, how about over at Citizenship and Immigration Services? While Brian and crew are laying the tracks down and sort of put the Autobahn in place, you and your team of warriors are in Ferraris just screaming across it. Tell us about some of the things that are going on over there that you've been able to put in place, that you are putting in place, thinking about where CIS is going undoubtedly with this new administration and all this emerging policy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Luke. Good to see you. And Brian, awesome. Definitely partnering with Brian. I think we're at a stage now where we're looking at partnering with Brian and other components and looking at innovative approaches truly to governance, to standards, so that we're not driving ourselves with those Ferraris into the ditch. Minimizing the rogue activity and becoming a little bit more mature in how we're delivering products, not just applications and services, but also data products. That's manifested itself in some good technology, really in establishing data lakehouses and data meshes, and really starting to share that data in various ways with our sister agencies or components. For example, doing zero copy data sharing within the cloud, doing federated clusters for real-time streaming, as well as consolidating all of our API products so that they're exposed, not just for external entities, but most importantly right now, again, for our sister components, so that we can do things like person-centric, so we can share asylee and refugee data with CBP, ICE, and others, as opposed to leapfrogging a lot of this antiquated technology of SFTP stuff, or doing direct connect nonsense, and really trying to move forward with an API or real-time streaming approach. Some of the other areas that from a CIS perspective and moving forward is, how do we really take human-centric design and make it a first-class citizen? Not only for all of our customers looking for benefits, but also for the adjudicators doing a lot of that work and speeding up the time to adjudicate. A lot of this gets manifested in, again, just good, true human-centered design, and starting to set, again, some of those standards so that we minimize a lot of the swivel chair, we minimize a lot of the back and forth that may occur, or the confusion that may occur as folks are applying for a benefit, and then trying to get status updates on where they stand and where they need to go, and appointments and things of that ilk. On the back end, we've invested heavily in looking at domain-driven design with a core of event-driven architecture. Really, taking microservices, breaking them down into the right business functions, aligning the right business functional areas to the right technology stacks, and really laying, to your point, really laying a lot of those foundational pipes so that we can just deliver faster, and we're minimizing the amount of back and forth and swirl with our business counterparts moving forward. So again, getting out of the Truman era of immigration and delivering those benefits to truly digitizing on the front end, but also on the back end and for our adjudicators.
That user-centered design, that customer experience, that subject continues to come up, and that's what it's all about, right? Let's start it from the customer's point of view, work our way backwards, and introduce all this great technology. Jonathan Album, you are in probably the most unique situation of all of the panel members here. You were a cabinet level CIO, you did a whole bunch of other jobs. You're now in a position to talk to a lot of those CIOs and the CTOs. You're kind of seeing it from a lot of different dimensions. What are you seeing out there, and from a strategic point of view, about how the CTOs aligning themselves and examining and forging technology and making sure that the right technology is there at the right time?
Well, Luke, great question. And, I think, the answer is representative of a lot of what we've already heard. The idea that we're in this phase now of digitization of processes on the front end and the back end. It's a very consistent theme. And one of the things that continues to come up in conversations that I have is in a post-COVID environment where we had to very rapidly digitize a lot of capabilities. Coming back now and thinking about, will our organizations be able to operate in the long term based on the changes that we made? Are those changes sustainable? Do we have the right security in place, so on and so forth? And people looking for the opportunity to do what I call a strategic pause and essentially an assessment to determine the best way forward. In a lot of cases, that conversation pivots into, what are tools that can help speed that digitization, and low code, no code capabilities continue to come up as being very important. Largely because it can democratize that application development role in agencies and push some of these responsibilities and opportunities, into business units. And, occasionally we'll hear the term citizen developer. I'm not sure if that is the right term in the federal government. I've heard other people call it delegated developers, but really it's this idea that inside our organizations, we can expand the field, expand the number of players who can support the digitization everyone is describing. And if we do it right, we're going to be able to meet agency needs that have been unmet for a long time. We know that there are more applications needed today than there were a year ago, and a year from now there'll be even more. That it's growing very quickly, and we don't necessarily have to manage all of these development processes inside our IT organizations, but we do need to have some good governance and some good models that can be followed. And I think that's where these CTO offices and other aspects of IT have a big role, because we have to pick the right technologies, pick the right platforms, understand the automation opportunities, and then push those things out in a way that they can be utilized by people that might not, be IT professionals, but they're IT savvy. And often I think about the this future of these pro developers and low code developers, business analysts working together to do really big complicated things. And if we're doing that, we can be more focused, I think, on the high value work over time. You can't forget the change management. The people that are going to use these applications, whether they are people who benefit from the programs of the government or federal employees or other members of our extended team serving citizens or other agency customers. So we have to not look at the technology simply as a panacea, that if I buy a platform or buy a capability, I can quickly digitize and change the way I work. It's digital transformation is a real team sport. I think, again, COVID was a rapid accelerator of this. I think we've all sort of come to that conclusion right now. And the places that I've seen where it was done best, it was done with a team approach. And, we include operations and others in that as well. Once these applications are built, they need
always a team effort there, undoubtedly. And I want to make sure that whatever box we put them in, or framework, it's also very secure, which is an added benefit there. Gary, how about over at Hitachi? You've got once again a perspective across a lot of federal agencies. What are you seeing out there?
Well, I think what we're seeing is, we've heard about this data explosion for years and years, unstructured data. And with the advent of the AI ML strategies, now people can start to leverage all that data. And I think what they're finding is in many cases, we got into a space where we would delete data because we didn't think it had any value anymore. So now we're starting to look at, now all that data would have been really important. So now we're starting to curate data. And what we're having challenges with is defining that data management strategy in the context of these AI ML discussions. Because as we drive more and more data into these models, they become much more effective and much more accurate. So what we're seeing is a lot of discussion around, how do I get data to the right place at the right speed and the right time, and then keep it there and understand how I catalog it and look at the metadata around that data, because a lot of times what they're looking at is the metadata, not necessarily the object itself. And I think I've heard, we've heard that from all the other CTOs, is this AI ML strategy. Almost every single one of them mentioned they had an AI ML initiative going on. And I think when you look at that, data is at the core of that. And I think people are also looking at hybrid cloud adoption methodologies, if you will, because everyone has pushed a lot to the public cloud, but they still have a lot that's on-prem. So I think it's looking at the right cloud strategy as it relates to that hybrid cloud approach, because I think that's where everyone's going to end up. You're going to have some on-prem, or what would be a private cloud, and then there's going to be quite a bit in the public cloud. So it's getting that data management strategy between those various clouds as well.
Right, it's definitely a blend, definitely a mix, and no doubt the AI ML is in play. And a lot of these products and goods and services that the agencies are buying have AI and ML embedded in them. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back in just a moment. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about, we've got the Chief Technology Officers here, and we're talking about all things technology. And right now we're just finishing up lining up our strategic discussion. I want to throw it over to you, Cal, at Equinix. Once again, you've got a perspective there where you're seeing this activity going on across a lot of different agencies in the private sector as well. Give us a glimpse of what it's looking like and how what you're doing at Equinix is lining up to strategically what they're attempting to do as an agency.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Luke. Hi, everybody. So artificial intelligence, as a lot of the other speakers have mentioned, is something that we are definitely seeing across many agencies. And let me just quickly illustrate what's happening in that space, which is new and interesting. So historically, artificial intelligence has been there since 1950s. And in the first wave of artificial intelligence, experts used to enter the rules into the system explicitly. And those systems were brittle because they couldn't handle a lot of corner cases. Then the next generation of AI came, where you have the era of big data, and statistical techniques now had enough data to meaningfully give predictions. Then the advent of GPUs, which were used for graphical processing unit, now can be used to do actual crunching of the data. And so that really made, and the advent of clouds made AI mainstream. But now what's happening is that most organizations are realizing that they, on average, like 75% of enterprise applications are using around 10 external data sources. So they are realizing that all the data is not within their four walls. So they have to go and get data from outside, and there are many organizations that want to monetize their data also. And this is not just happening within between different companies, even within different departments in the same organization, data sharing is becoming extremely critical, and they don't have good ways to do it because people don't want to part with their raw data. So that's the first thing, how to do data sharing. We are seeing a lot of demand for that. And the second thing we are seeing is that AI is becoming distributed. It's not just moving data, massive data sets into a cloud, building your AI model, and then inferencing that model there. What we are finding is that AI now, you build a model in one location, and then you move that model to a different location close to the edge for inference. And people have started to leverage cloud native technologies, like distributed Kubernetes, to actually orchestrate and federate the movement of AI models from one location to the other. And Equinix, we are heavily involved in both because our legacy is being the neutral location where the clouds and networks come to interact with each other. So now that's the same location people are actually putting what they call as AI marketplaces. So that's where you bring in your data and algorithm between different groups, and you trade how to do that. So we are seeing the advent of AI marketplaces, and we are also seeing the actual distributed core edge architectures getting deployed at Equinix, and they're leveraging our Equinix fabric to interconnect all these distributed locations.
A very critical part of the ecosystem about stitching this together. Rob talked about this very thing, about this, more advanced ways of sharing the data. Let me actually throw it over to you, Rob, and give us an example of a technology that you all did some forging on, some some examination, testing, rolled it into production. And then, tell us about the results of that, right? What were the, I always like to hear the sort of, so what, all right? So we put this technology in, what happened once we did it?
Yeah, absolutely, Luke. I'll stick with the data theme and data products, really. And I think that's, to me, is critical, at least from where we sit, is continuing to focus on products, and data is like anything else, it's just a product. Some of the technologies that we've been really partnering with, really the creators for the past probably 4 or 5 years, has been looking at Spark, looking at Delta, looking at AutoML, looking at Redash. These have provided a very good platform and ecosystem for us to manage data, looking at CDC from all of our sources and streaming that data so that we can then make it actionable, so we can then do data engineering, and then ultimately start to intelligently use and leverage algorithms to make better sense, predictions, what have you, of that data. So we've actually partnered with not only the creators of Kafka to do a lot of the streaming, we also partnered with the creators of Spark so that they get a better understanding of what we want to do, so we can understand the tech, and then ultimately start to democratize it to not just technicians, but moving forward, actually leveraging it. So we've talked about low code, no code, and citizen development. My goal is to really do data as a service for individuals in the field so that they can simply become their own data scientists with this platform and ecosystem of data. So we've already started to realize that those benefits over the past 2 years, going into the field, showcasing how folks can leverage this technology, training them on how to use this technology. And now we've got folks essentially being citizen development data product producers in various facets of our organization, either from just creating simple business insights to now all other areas and pockets of our organization doing essentially data science as a service for themselves and creating real products that have a value and meaning. Some of this has to do with entity resolution or network analytics. Some of it has to do with just NLP or text analytics. So we've actually have quite a few of these things in production, leveraging this technology. And then again, I think what makes sense from an organization and as we move out and expand to, as I say, our other sister agencies, is we can start to build this catalog of digital products, not just the output, but also how we start to make these digital products, those algorithms that we can share and reuse, the actual ground truth data sets that can be, again, reused or emboldened so that we can make better sense of it. So we've actually, again, huge success in just working with our production folks in the service center operations, in our field operations directorates, and then with risk and fraud and our CDO teams.
Power to the folks on the ground there. It sounds awesome and super impressive as always. Gary, how about over at Hitachi? Can you give us an example, one specific example there of where you've seen this technology be implemented and the outcome from it?
Well, I think we're seeing some of these technologies being implemented in some of the environments that we're used to dealing with a lot of data, HPC environments that were, used to dealing with petabytes and petabytes of data that they were crunching through. And everyone is taking advantage of kind of that learning and that technology and that approach to that data set in the other agencies. So we have quite a few implementations in the labs where they're using a parallel file system, if you will, to enable high-speed data access to run these models and leveraging things like GPU Direct to keep the data close to that application processing. So I think it's leveraging those technologies. We see a lot of agencies leveraging not only our technology, but other industry technologies in the market to fix these common data management and solutions. or challenges.
Undoubtedly, with all this sensor technology, IoT capabilities that are out there collecting all this data, you're just getting football fields of this information that has to be processed, and all this technology that's emerging to analyze it, super important and very timely. Sanjay, how about over at SBA? I'm sure you've got a great example of where you all were able to forge some technology, put it into the business line and solve some of those big problems you're having over there, or we're having.
Absolutely. Let me give you two quick ones, and I believe very quick ones, and hopefully very resonating ones. So SBA.gov is our primary portal to the outside world. A few years ago, we had actually migrated it away from an on-premises world to a cloud environment. But more importantly, we'd gone to a serverless architecture, and we'd also moved to use of microservices. So back in April last year, the president tweeted SBA.gov, and within the blink of an eye, the number of concurrent users went up by over 150 times within seconds. Given that this was already set up in an auto-scaling environment, the site just auto-scaled in near real time, no blimps, performed smoothly. But the most important aspect of this is because this was a primary portal to the world, we could not afford this to be underperforming and certainly not being available at all. Another quick example let me talk about is about the cloud-based cybersecurity I mentioned earlier. So back in, again, last March, I was looking at, we have full visibility into all of our incoming traffic, all of our assets, and all of these things, regardless if people are remote or not. And we've had that for many years. So one of the things I was looking at was a portal of incoming traffic into all of our portals. And I noticed that there was traffic coming from overseas. Knowing that these programs were designed for the continental United States, we implemented geofencing. Simply put, what it did was blocked any traffic which was not originating from the continental United States. And yes, some of the sharper folks might say, well, it's easy to spoof your traffic. Yes, it is, no doubt about it. But for the basic bad actor out there, perhaps it's a little too big a hurdle to climb up and try and spoof that traffic. But so in terms of a mission impact, we basically block traffic which could have submitted applications or maybe had other bad intentions. Clearly, the SBA has been in the crosshairs of all of the bad actors globally, and we just have to make sure that we are hopefully half a step ahead of them.
And you're doing a fine job of that. Jonathan, how about, can you give us one quick example of where you've seen something coming out of the lab, so to speak, into production, and then sort of what was the outcome of that?
Sure. So, I was talking about low code capabilities before, and, we've worked with a number of law enforcement agencies, and, we found that oftentimes, investigators have a lot of point solutions that they have to deal with, and it's difficult to
deal with.
Right. Difficult to understand the complexity of an investigation or how to move forward. So, we used our low code capabilities with one of these law enforcement agencies to, create a tool to help them track cases more seamlessly, create a unified view that allows agents and officers and leadership to see the status of the case. We gave investigators a lot of control to schedule their own appointments and track the status of their work. We did this in a mobile-friendly way. We recognize you got to meet people where they are. Investigators in the field, they need to work off of different kinds of mobile devices, and adding on top of that, connections back into the ServiceNow platform for asset management, for tracking evidence, for tracking other assets, and also dynamic scheduling capabilities, giving them and leadership the ability to assign and reassign cases based on proximity. We found to be very important, along with reporting and analytics that are in our platform, but easily wired into a low-code application to ensure that everyone's got the right information, can make good management decisions and good on-the-ground decisions about how an investigation is proceeding and what are the next steps to move that investigation forward.
Super important when they're in the thick of it, fighting the good fight, if you will. Brian Campo, can you give an example of where you all had sort of cooked something up over there, laid it down, and then were able to unlock this capability across the department?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll kind of harken back to what Cal and Rob were talking about on the data side. I think some of the things that we're trying to do at the department level to support data and to support the work that Rob's trying to do with, streaming data and getting more analytics and more insights out to the mission space is, at the department level, we're trying to figure out how do we fuse data? How do we bring data from USCIS, CBP, FEMA, ICE? How do we bring all of this data together, make it valuable, give all of our component agencies a chance to use it, let them figure out what they want to do with it, make it easy and available to them, but most of all, do it in a consistent manner. And that's what Cal was talking about, where you've got data that, maybe each individual component doesn't own, but they need to figure out how to synthesize information from it. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do at the department level. With our recently stood up chief data officer, we're building out these data governance principles. We're trying to figure out what our data catalogs look like across the department, and really trying to figure out how does data relate across these very disparate data sets, consistent data elements, understanding how all of our components are going to use it, and then most of all understanding sort of what the citizenry wants. How do we support those citizen developers? How do we give them the data so that they can do things that we wouldn't even be thinking about? So at the department level, we're really trying to figure out how do we support our component and citizenry to give them the data they need to be able to support us.
Give them the data at the right time, at the right place. And the CDO, once again, another entity where it's like, well, what's that? And all of a sudden, hey, this is a really important position in every agency. And hats off to Mike Horton for being selected on that job over at DHS. All right, Cal, how about we're talking about data right now. You gave a bunch of examples. Give us one example of where you've seen this being implemented, whatever technology you want to choose,
Sure.
to sort of enable these agencies' mission.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently, we are working with our partners on something called Analytics Anywhere. And it has three main attributes that we have built together. And basically, the whole major premise is that data has gravity. So if petabytes or terabytes of data are getting generated at the edge, you cannot move that data to some central location to do the processing. So you have to now, the world is changing. Instead of moving data to compute, you have to move compute to where the data resides. And so what we are leveraging is something called as federated AI. So remember that word, federated AI. So what federated AI lets you do is basically move compute to where the data is residing, process that data, and let's just move model insights to a central location and aggregate that. So it gives you privacy benefits because you're not shipping your raw data out of your four walls, as well as cost reduction. You're not backhauling all that data to a central location. So that's the first major attribute of this Analytics Anywhere. Second key attribute is the marketplace that I already mentioned. So this actually is a marketplace. Think of it where providers of data, providers of algorithms, and even providers of AI pipelines like Kubeflow, et cetera, you can register those, and then buyers can come and actually get smart contracts and then actually say, okay, I'm going to use this data for so many days, and then actually run their algorithms, create the model, and then they can take the model out of this secure marketplace sandbox, which is secure Kubernetes cluster, and they can use it in their production environments. So the whole idea of marketplace is the second key part of the solution of Analytics Anywhere. And the third one is basically what everybody has already mentioned, no code and low code, because end of the day, we believe that you have to democratize AI. Otherwise, subject matter experts, it's taking them too long. And so all of this is now hosted at a location like Equinix, which is well interconnected to the different data sources, public clouds, private data centers, the edge. So this is the new solution that we have brought. It's called Analytics Anywhere, and we are experimenting with many agencies. Yeah.
Fantastic. Sounds awesome. Well, we're going to take another short break and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking to all the CTOs, or a lot of the CTOs across the community, both our partners and in the agencies. And right now we're talking about a specific example. I'm going to go up to you, Ron, at Department of Justice. Give us an example of something that you sort of brought out of the lab, if you will, rolled it into production.
So I love to hear all the examples. I think I'm going to build a little bit on the theme from the data side. We've seen
Sure.
improved data sharing and the use of geospatial technologies during national events and for investigations. So GIS and data has long been an important capability and something I've been involved with, but awareness has really grown sort of really across the federal sphere since the Geospatial Data Act came out. So our geospatial strategy is an extension of our overarching data strategy. And I'm lucky to be one of the tri-chairs for our community of interest with 2 geospatial experts from our components. They help to ensure that we have a thriving community that shares our practices, identifies resources, and honestly, they're good partners with each other. They really share new use cases that really gets everyone thinking. And this year, we even hosted our second really well-attended geospatial showcase. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you, Ron. I really do appreciate that. We're going to go to priorities. I'm going to start with you, Sanjay. Top priority for you right now for this year?
Top priority is improving customer experience. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but for us, it means specifically being able to reach the underserved communities. All of our programs that we're delivering on behalf of the nation's economic recovery initiative, they need to get to the underserved communities. So all of the technologies we've talked about across the panel here today, any or all of them are being focused around trying to deliver better, improved customer experiences and specifically being able to get to the underserved communities.
Fantastic. Brian Campo, top priority for you at DHS?
Yeah, I think Sanjay hit the nail on the head. I think it's a combination of customer experience and faster delivery. For us, it's all about trying to reduce the burden that we put on all of our customers, which would be, citizens, other partners around the federal government, trying to understand their needs a little bit more, trying to understand a little bit more about how we can get them information and capability quicker, and then just delivering that capability more often, right? Figuring out ways to get capability through the ideation phase, through the requirements phase, and out to the customers as quick as possible. Things like SecDevOps, UI, UX, customer experience management, stakeholder management. All of those things are really what we're focused on, and they kind of go across the board.
Focus on that citizen, focus on that farmer, that operator, a small business owner, the adjudicator. I love it. Speaking of adjudicator, Rob Brown, top priority for you over at Citizenship and Immigration Services?
Definitely human-centered design at the forefront. To be more specific, looking at learning and smart services, so dynamic platforms, smart decision automation, managed recognition, more of the connected edge systems that we could take advantage of, more of the voice, visual, activated workflows are some of the areas we're really focusing on with the backdrop of human-centered design and customer experience. That as well, coupled with AI and ML plus adaptive services. So ultimately looking at 100% AI or bot facilitated call centers as an example. Again, data as a service, as our staff, adjudicators, as well as our customers are more tech savvy and demand more of us. So we want to make sure we're ahead of that. Automated pre-adjudication. And then really AI and ML embedded in all delivery and software to, again, provide a more robust experience.
All packaged together for a great experience. Sounds awesome. Ron, how about over at Department of Justice? Top priority.
So loving what I'm hearing. So people advancing data and the AI strategies, the cyber EO, and continuing to insert modern technologies like cloud, IDPs, comms, zero trust brokers, low code, advancing computational capabilities, edge computing. Great list out here today. All of it's on deck. Thanks, Luke.
Fantastic. And, really seeing the extraction above the line of these technologies and again, out of the pliers and wires kind of conversation, focusing on the user experience. Jonathan, one priority that you see for ServiceNow?
I think the priority is bringing these different technologies together in a form of hyper automation. all of these things we've talked about, whether it's AI or robotic process automation, workflow, these are all great individual tools that could do a lot for an agency, but I think it's really a better together story. When you bring it all together, you're limited only by your imagination in a lot of ways about how these different these different technologies can work together to change the way your agency operates. I think, we can move this idea of automation, really away from, a single process or function, but to end-to-end digital processes that work across an agency and take people's focus away from the administrative tasks and mundane kinds of things to the higher value work that we should all be focused on. So we're talking a lot about that and seeing activities across a wide variety of organizations.
Stitching it all together. Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up to this last question. I'm going to ask Cal, if you want to throw in your top priority, you can go ahead and do that, along with tell us what it's going to look like over the next couple of years. What's the demand signal out there? What do you guys got in the Petri dish?
Absolutely. There are two top priorities where we are actually focusing on. One is data governance and data management. And the second one actually is 5G. We are looking at the implications of 5G and on the architecture, end-to-end architecture that Jonathan was talking about. And with respect to what are some of the things that I think how this technology can help in the vision for the future, let me give you some very concrete examples. I know a student of mine in Sunday school, she has a cancer. And in Stanford, they said that they cannot diagnose that because there is not enough data for them to figure out what's the cure. So the family has moved to Houston to get better treatment, but they're finding there is not enough data sharing across different organizations to find a cure for that. So the vision of this data sharing and this AI ultimately is to help for scenarios like that. There were senior citizens in our neighborhood who were asked to evacuate because there was fire in the neighborhood, but in reality, the fire was a little bit farther away. So there was, again, lack of data sharing between the different organizations. So in future, I believe with proper, managed data sharing, we can really help humanity. And I think that's the direction we are going, and that's what we're working towards.
Right data to the right individuals at the right time. Sounds awesome, and really looking forward to that. Thank you for that. Gary, can you give us your top priority? And then again, what does it look like around the corner over the horizon? What's the demand signal that you all are seeing?
Yeah, I think it's just continuing that kind of data management. One of the things that I'm keenly focused on is educating our customers and our government partners to let them know that we're more than just kind of block storage, which is what a lot of people historically have thought about us. We have a broad end-to-end data portfolio that we can help with the AI ML. We can help them with data management. We can help with cloud modernization. So a lot of it is around that education and letting them know that, hey, we're more than just, flash technology that's resilient and very performant, but we do have that broad portfolio that we can help bring to bear on those data challenges.
Yes, super important flash technology, but all these other activities, including awareness, super important as well. Jonathan, what are you all seeing there? What are you cooking up in the Petri dish over there at ServiceNow that is going to need to be available to the community in the next couple of years?
I think, again, it's this idea of these disparate technologies, but being brought together on a single platform. And, one of the things that we're very proud of at ServiceNow is that, our platform is we think unique because it's a single technology. It's one architecture, it's one database, but core to the platform are the AI capabilities, RPA capabilities that we've recently acquired, as well as visibility tools. And when you have all of those capabilities in one place, in one database, you can do a lot of unique things very quickly and with less operational risk because you're not dealing with the complex integration of different tools. We can bring together the data across the systems of record that we know we need for end-to-end workflows and different business processes. Available with the technologies that are core to the ServiceNow platform, sets a foundation for real digital transformation.
Sure, and a super important aspect of this whole journey that we're all on. Rob Brown, you mentioned that you're working closely with folks that are developing different types of software to make sure you get your needs and requirements put in there. But undoubtedly, I know you're also working with folks that are still thinking and designing things. What's it looking like out there? What are you guys cooking up in regards to things that you know are going to be needed during this immigration life cycle journey?
So again, it's the real core, and what we've been looking at more and more is just full digitization. How can we do more pre-adjudication? How do we get out of the business of static code workflows and business rules to make them more dynamic and event-driven? These are some of the areas and some of the technologies we're looking at, a lot of which is pretty cutting edge, alpha and beta, and then trying to leverage that across the various delivery divisions that we have at CIS. I'd be remiss to say that part of that is going back to what Brian and I are working on that innovative technical governance, is looking towards having developer portals, not just for the folks that we contract with and the experts, but these developer portals that can provide those libraries and those frameworks almost in a push button manner to build that unified pipeline that essentially is ATO'd. So we're looking at not only these technologies to help the mission, but also to provide those standards governance in a very innovative way to enable faster delivery, a little bit cleaner methods of building those pipelines. And we've partnered again with one group we've partnered with is with Spotify to understand how they do development. With microservices, it's a sprawl. So we're trying to understand how we can bring the reins back in and start to really capitalize on what we've built and reduce some of that redundancy.
And put
so
some
of the areas we're looking at.
Yeah, and put some framework and structure together. And it's almost like you're franchising out some of that development, but there's some context around it and some security around it, so it can be done safely. That sounds awesome. Sanjay, how about at SBA? You all are certainly on a journey. There's no unmet demand that's not going to get a challenge over there. What are you looking at as far as over the next couple of years about how small business owners are going to interact with SBA?
Yeah, Luke, and I think one of the things we've been laid the foundation a couple of years ago, and we're looking to accelerate it, is what I call as a 360 view of the customer, specifically the SBA customer. We have many touch points with our customers through our various programs, and we tend to sort of have a siloed effort around it. And so we're saying, if we understand a customer, the SBA customer, we should be able to, interact with this customer, knowing what we have done or have worked with in the past through our different programs. So that's one foundational element, and I think we are making good progress around it in that dimension. But sort of going forward, I know there was another aspect to your question about what's the future looking like, what's the vision? For me, it's basically 6 words: think big, start small, iterate rapidly. So what does that mean? Have a grand vision. Think big. Look for the moon, look for the stars, look for the Marses of the world, look for the next galaxy. You have to have a grandiose vision. We got to start small in a very tangible manner, very specific manner, specific to the business, specific to the mission, and demonstrate value to them. And as you're doing that, you're learning, and then you're iterating through that. And then the final thought I would say is, we have to be bold, we have to be confident, and we got to challenge the status quo.
Sure. My professor used to say, you got to have a big, hairy, audacious goal, but at the end of the day, you got to put product on the ground as well. So it's a good blend there. Brian, how about over Department of Homeland Security? Tell us what's it looking like out there in a couple of years as you all continue on this maturity journey?
Yeah, I think we're looking at a few different things. I think, always trying to get out in front of technology is really what CTOs do across the board. I think really we're looking at, data as an asset. We are also looking at trying to, better leverage some of the, the existing priorities. So, we're always trying to mature our zero trust. I think I've talked about in the past, sort of our 2-year forecast for zero trust. One of the things that'll be really interesting is bringing data into the zero trust fold we're working now with the application owners, starting to have some conversations about how do we make data more secure. So inside of applications, not only are we doing identity management, not only are we looking at how do we evaluate every request to an application, but now how do we actually start protecting the data in an application, even outside of the application's permission. So, starting to look at some of our endpoints, some of our policy decision points, even some of our specific evaluations of security protocols, but applying that into the data so we make sure that we get ahead of any attempts to compromise systems and can actually protect the data even outside of the system that it's owned by.
A very delicate balance of trying to do the right things at a department level, unlock this capability, and then sort of step away, if you will, so the Rob Browns of the world can come in there and again drive those Ferraris down that track. I think it's really important. Sounds like you're striking a great balance there. Ron, how about over Department of Justice? Take us home here. What's it going to look like in a couple of years as you look across that specter?
I think there's a lot to be done. So I think we need to put the people first, and I think Rob Brown said it great about the focus on the user experience. We need proper and effective data management, and we're going to do that through advancing our data strategy. This is going to enable the use, the appropriate sharing, and analytics, and it's going to advance the value of the data. Brian Campo made some great points today on the data management side and the value of the data. We need to understand your users and data and how that will allow us to unlock our capabilities for cybersecurity and innovation. And honestly, Sanjay made some great points there also. From my perspective, examples include modern identity management, AI and analytics, zero trust, the importance of completing your transition to IPv6 and how we're going to phase that in. And we need to look at the computational capability. As Gary talked about higher performance computing and Cal talked about the benefits of GPUs and computing on the edge, this is really important for analytics and insights, especially with the advancements of IoT and the enablement of 5G. And we're going to have to continue to work on increasing the speed of our developers. And looking at your development staff and the need for low code and no code, Jonathan made great points there. Really, really important for us to continue to involve our workforce in bringing them into the development process. There's a lot left to do, as I said, Luke, and it's going to be an eventful journey as we move forward. Right, and it's an evolution here, keeping the operator, if you will, in mind. And we really do appreciate that. Well, I want to thank all of you. I know some of you, many of you personally, and I know what you do on a daily basis. And I just want to say thank you for everything that you do, both on the partner side and certainly the federal service side. I'd like to thank the sponsors here for supporting us on the show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make the program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank you, the listening audience out there that tune in every month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum, which is part of the Federal News Network.